nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.
Well, aloha, nature nuts. You'll never guess where we are today. We're in Hawaii. And the reason we're here is we're going to go looking for Hawaiian reptiles and amphibians. It's a fascinating subject. And I'll start by telling you that there are no native land reptiles or amphibians, no frogs, salamanders, lizards, snakes, turtles, that are native to the Hawaiian Islands. The only native species are the ones that live in the salt water, a couple of species of sea turtles and one species of sea snake. All the rest were brought here by people, introduced species. I want to leave the idea of introduced species for another show and just focus in on the variety of interesting reptiles and amphibians that we now have here in Hawaii. They're interesting creatures, they're likable creatures, all easygoing. Nobody seems to mind them at all. They especially love their geckos, and you can just load up on gecko souvenirs if you're so inclined. They're not quite so crazy about the Hawaiian blind burrowing worm snake, but I figure that's just because most people don't know about the Hawaiian blind burrowing worm snake. We're going to introduce the world to that critter if we can find it, but for the moment, let's go looking for geckos.
In some countries, the sound of a gecko in the house means good luck to a newlywed couple.
Well, this is just a perfect setup for geckos. You know, the resort industry in Hawaii, it couldn't be nicer to geckos if it tried. A palm tree, lovely place to live if you're a gecko. It's got an electric light on it to attract insects so that you have lots to eat. It's a perfect little environment, especially for house geckos and morning geckos. And every once in a while, someone will climb up this tree using climbing spurs to pick the coconuts or to trim the fronds. And in the process, they put these little divots in the tree with their spurs. And the divots are a great place to put your eggs if you're a gecko. Yeah, like right here, there's some gecko eggs in one of these little divots. They always lay them in pairs, and they harden. As soon as the air hits them, they harden, they sort of glue right onto the tree, and then they incubate there for about between a month and 2 months. Wonderful spot, and you know, you just couldn't be... Well, here I just roused up a little gecko here right now. I don't even know what kind this one is. Doesn't look like a house gecko. What'd I tell you? It's perfect. Gecko paradise here in Hawaii. Aloha. And there's an anole lizard in there. They are so tough to see. This is a great spot for anoles. You might think at first that there's only one anole in here, but there are probably dozens of them. They're just so beautifully camouflaged that you have to sit and look at a spot like this before you can start to see them. And once you do see them, you might think that you're looking at 3 or 4 different species of lizards, because some of them are brown and some of them are green, some of them have a white stripe down the back, some of them don't, but they're all the same species. It's all the green anole. The green anole was originally a pet lizard that either escaped or was let free, and it's native to both the southeastern United States and Cuba. These ones just happen to have come from Cuba. Anyway, they really like these sorts of lush, irrigated gardens because they enjoy being up in the leaves. They need a lot of good broad leaves to hop around on. That's what they like. And they lay their eggs in the moist soil, and you need irrigation to produce moist soil. A lot of these coastal areas in Hawaii are not actually that wet. Naturally, they're quite dry. And they're fun to watch. I mean, I get a real kick out of them. You know, unlike the skinks, which are the other obvious lizards that are active during the day, the skinks stay on the ground, the anoles are up in the vegetation, and you might even confuse them with geckos because both the geckos and the anoles have sticky toe pads on their feet for climbing up leaves and trees and walls. It's actually quite a little gymnasium trying to get around in these leaves. Ah, they're totally graceful, beautiful, graceful creatures. I don't know, I just really like them. People like them, they're perfectly harmless, they're helpful. Great thing to have in your garden. I'm almost jealous. You know, when I was a kid, everybody had a pet turtle. Do you remember? They were about that big, little green ones, baby turtles. You'd buy them in the pet stores. And if you fed them well and looked after them, suddenly they would start to grow. And pretty soon they weren't green anymore. And then, pretty soon they'd be too big for your turtle tank. A lot of them were given to zoos, and some people even let their turtles go. Back home, that didn't work very well. They would die in the winter. But here in Hawaii, they do very well, and they do well in garden pools as well. They don't mind people. Now, the species of turtle we're talking about is called the red-eared slider turtle, because you can see they have that kind of red patch back where the ear would be if they had an ear there, which they don't. But very typical member of the pond turtle family, quite low from top to bottom, nicely streamlined for swimming, very good swimmers, and they always hang around in ponds. These ones are doing so well that they're even producing eggs and having babies, and it's now a self-sustaining population. They just get up into the garden, find a nice soft spot in the soil, and that's where they dig the little hole where they put the eggs. Wonderful critters, and looks like they're probably here to stay as well.
To identify a Hawaiian gecko, you have to check the pattern of scales on its chin, front foot, and tail.
Now, it's a well-known fact that there are no snakes in Hawaii. So if I were to flip over this rock, there'd be no chance of me finding a snake, right? Okay, get a load of this. I knew this was a good spot. And you have to be a real nature nut to realize that what we're looking at here is not an earthworm, it's a very tiny snake. Have a close look at it. This is the blind burrowing snake. And you can see that instead of having a ringed body like an earthworm, it has scales on the body. It has almost no eyes, just a couple of dark spots on the head. It has a little forked tongue, just like all other snakes. And it's beautifully streamlined for a burrowing lifestyle. It spends almost all of its life underground. And it eats little bugs. It's completely harmless. I mean, it wouldn't even bother to bite me. What would I care? And it's just a really delicate little critter that coexists with people. Now, this is not a common snake in Hawaii. In fact, the biologists I taught to, they didn't even think we'd find one. But it does live here. You know where it came from? It's a neat story. It arrived in 1929 in the soil around the roots of some potted palm trees that were brought from the Philippines to landscape a schoolyard in Honolulu. And it's been spreading in potted plants ever since. It's a lovely little critter. There, you see, it's dwarfed by an average housefly. I'll tell you another story too. We found one here yesterday, and we were just about to take some shots of it, and it got away. It fell out of my hand and into the fuzzy cover of our sound man's microphone, where we lost it. It went deep, deep in there. It's a real burrower. Spent about half an hour in there. We were sure that we were going to hear a sort of a slithering sound for the rest of the show, but we did eventually get it out, and then it escaped again. So they're sneaky, and they're rare, and they're totally harmless. And yes, there is one species of snake in Hawaii. Now it's time to show you one of the weirdest reptiles in all of Hawaii. In fact, one of the weirdest reptiles on this entire planet. And I'm in the right place. I'm in a backyard in the town of Makawao on Maui, and we're looking for Jackson's chameleons. There are a couple of them in this yard, and we wouldn't have found them without the help of some local young guys. So let's go have a look, and I'll show you just how weird these things really are. So you know, it's really hard to know where to start with these things because they are weird from the tip of their nose to the tip of their tail. The one I was just holding is a female, and there's a female up in the top of this tree here, this little tree. And as you can see, she's totally weird. Let's start with the head. It looks kind of toothless, like an old guy. Sort of like that. They do have teeth. And the eyes are set in turrets. Now, we've seen that before. You've seen that in anole lizards, but these turrets are serious turrets. These are the biggest turrets on the eyes of any lizards, and the two eyes don't have to look at the same thing at the same time. They can swivel around, look for mates, look for bugs to eat, things like that. They can aim them in the same direction when they have to, but for the most part, they just scan around with their two eyes. Then, the leaf-like body that's flattened side to side has a beautiful camouflage color to it, and they can remain hidden in this sort of plant. The feet are another very cool thing. Instead of having the usual 5-toed foot that you see in most lizards, these two toes have grown together, and these ones have grown together, and you get a sort of a branch-grabbing foot with the skin wrapped around those sets of toes. It's very bizarre. It's only found in the chameleon family of lizards, and it works perfectly. It allows them to move super slowly through the trees and to sneak up on things and to be very, very stealthy, very, very camouflaged. Wonderful creatures. They also have a prehensile tail. It's sort of like a fifth hand for them, usually held coiled up, but they can grab branches with that as well. Now, I know there was here's a young one, and you can see the young one looks a lot like the adult. It's smaller, and it's also not green. Apparently, the young ones never quite turn green. They're always this sort of blotchy, gray-brownish white color, and that's a good camouflage in its own right, especially if they're near the trunk of the tree. And, you see the way it's moving. It's trying to pretend that it's just very slowly blowing in the breeze, that it's just a piece of plant. And that fools the bugs all the time. You can use that yourself if you're trying to swat houseflies or something. Don't just go look like that. Go. Get some. It's a good technique. I've left the best to last. There's a male up here, and the male Jackson's chameleon looks for all the world, if you ask me, like a little Triceratops dinosaur crawling around in a tree. It has not only the 3 horns on the head that Triceratops once had, but it also has a bit of a bony frill to protect the neck. It's a really weird critter, and you know what it uses those horns for? It uses them to battle with other males. These are very territorial animals. They like to have their own tree, their own bush to themselves, and they'll run any competitors right out of there in short order, poking them with those horns. Oh, and here, now, the female is hunting for bugs, and, oh, you're gonna like this. Oh, there we go. Yeah, how about that? The tongue is as long as the entire body, and it shoots out, has a sticky tip. That's how they catch bugs. All in all, I think that is one of the weirdest, quirkiest, most interesting animals on this planet. Don't you?
The blind snakes are the smallest snakes of all, and there are many species in tropical areas. Hawaii, Papani, Hani, Honolulu. Long time ago in old Hawaii, when the islands were oh so young, there were no lizards, frogs, or toadies, no salamanders, turtles, crocodilians. You see, the reptiles and the frogs don't like salt water, except for sea snakes, the kind that cannot hiss. No matter where you sail across the briny blue deep, you'll never find a place as far away as this. Then along came a boat across the ocean. It was a bigger outrigger canoe. It was a bigger outrigger canoe, loaded up with camping gear and junk food, and the beginnings of the island zoo. And still they come, aloha from the pet store, in flower pots and luggage all the time. Bugs and fish and seeds and little reptiles, they love the land in which there is no winter time. Now we've got snakes and frogs in old Hawaii, and we've got geckos, skinks, and weird chameleons. Soft-shell turtles in Hawaii, but still no rattlesnakes or crocodilians. Not yet.
Chameleons are so well camouflaged that most people don't notice them even in their own gardens. Well, you know, if you spend any time out at night with a flashlight in Hawaii, you'll find it very easy to find toads. And not just any toads, but the world's biggest toad. Now this is Bufo marinus. Some people call it the marine toad, some people call it the cane toad, some people call it the giant neotropical toad. It's native to South America, and they just love these lawns. They were originally introduced to Hawaii to control insect pests of sugarcane, but they don't really care much for insect pests of sugarcane. They like it much better down here on the resort lawns, and they breed in any sort of little ponds that they can find. They're doing very well. This one is about, say half the size of the biggest ones. The biggest ones are great big things. And they also have the biggest poison glands of any toads. Those are these large, sort of puffy things behind the head. This one looks like it's having a bit of a rough time of life. Looks like it got into an ant nest earlier tonight. It's got one ant clomped onto one of its toes and another one chewing on its eardrum, its tympanum. That must sound really terrible, if you ask me. But it's a beautiful toad. Gorgeous eyes, lovely thing. Sometimes if you bug them, they'll puff up. Sometimes they just hop away. I'll just bug it and see what it does. It puffs up. There you go. You know, geckos are lizards, and they're so neat that even if you're not the sort of person who generally likes reptiles, you're going to like geckos. It's easy to find geckos in Hawaii. In fact, it's almost guaranteed. You just look around the lights wherever you're staying, and you'll probably find
geckos hunting for insects there. And if you watch them for a while, you'll notice that they have some wonderful weird behaviors too. They chirp every once in a while. Sometimes they chirp quite a bit, depends on how many are around. They chirp at each other, and the chirping of geckos, well, it's a beautiful tropical sound. I love going to sleep to the sound of the surf coming in and the geckos chirping around the lights. Very beautiful. They also have a habit, I don't think many other animals do this. I can't think of any examples, but you know, they can't blink because they have no eyelids, but every once in a while their eye gets dirty, and the way they clean it is just to reach up with their tongue and lick the scale that covers the eye clean. That's a very bizarre thing. I'm glad I don't have to do that. I can't even wear contact lenses. I hate poking myself in the eye. There are other interesting things about them. Some species are parthenogenetic, which means that there are only females, no males. Females give birth to more females, and on and on and on. There's even an interesting ecological thing going on here in Hawaii, where the original colonizer gecko, the mourning gecko that probably came here with the Polynesian people when they first arrived, it is being replaced by the house gecko, which only got here a few decades ago. So most of the geckos we've been seeing around here are house geckos. Anyway, I really get a kick out of them. We've been seeing a lot of geckos here tonight. We got some help from our friend Tiger. He's 5.5 years old, and he put it very well. He said, you know, these geckos are so cute it kills me.
Poison arrow frogs, Japanese wrinkled frogs, and American bullfrogs have also been introduced to Hawaii.
Well, what do you figure? Is that a great bunch of critters or what? I love looking at reptiles and amphibians in Hawaii because they're all so easygoing. You don't have to worry about anything when you're dealing with them. They're wonderful. Of course, it might not always be that way. In fact, they're quite worried here in Hawaii that something called the brown tree snake might arrive here. It's already been introduced to other islands in the Pacific where it absolutely devastated the native bird populations, but we can always hope that it doesn't quite make it here. For the moment, this place is a paradise for reptiles and amphibians. It's a paradise for visitors from the frozen north like myself. It's lovely. I love it here. That's why I'm a nature nut. And I hope you are too. Bye for now.
Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.